Thank you very much, Patrick. That was so good. And I'm aware that I am standing between you and a good night from Frank, so I will not be very long, but I do want to say a few things. Now, several people today have referred to Don Berwick. Don wanted to be here, and I want to tell you that the day after he did not get nominated for the Democratic nomination for governor of Massachusetts, I called him and invited him to come here today. And he really wanted to do it, but it seems the Gates Foundation was not as delicate as I and called him a little bit earlier and convinced him to come to Panama. Then he thought he could still get to Panama in time to come here today, but couldn't. So I want to read you something of Don's. He writes, "So what is evidence? What is the new scholarship of improvement? The simplistic view is to consider objectivity as hard-headed and subjectivity as soft. It is to pit science against passion and belief against proof. That is not right. The opposite of science is not passion, it's ignorance. The opposite of passion is not science, it's torpor. When our relationship to what we study is deep and caring, when we can use all our senses to acquire not just data, but wisdom, and not just about parts, but about the whole, then we can be both passionate and scientific. The world we live in is a world of true complexity, strong social influences, tight dependence on local context, a world of uncertain predictions, a world less of proof than of navigation, less of final conclusions than of continual learning." And I think that is a really, really important underlying theme for what we've been talking about today. Now, just a few more comments stepping down from that mountaintop to our more mundane considerations about evidence and how we're moving beyond the programmatic yes-no judgments as the only way to think about evidence, and as we move beyond programs that make up the what works lists, as we move toward the many kinds of evidence that we need in order to understand what makes it work, in order to get under the hood, in order to extract the effectiveness factors that travel more easily than model programs, in order to understand the context that can undermine the best program. I love a quote that I take from Patrick about how a lousy system can undermine the best program every time. Have I got it about right? So we're moving beyond just programs to what needs attention in the larger environment, including not just transportation, but even poverty. And we're moving beyond programs to understand systems and capacity. And as we look under the hood, it is pretty much different from relying on buying programs off a list. Because if making systems work is the great task of this generation, and I agree with Tony who quoted Atul Gawande on that subject, if we need to build capacity to come together to improve the work, if relationships are central to our work, then we must be vastly more inclusive in the kinds of evidence that we find credible and that we honor. Now, what do we have to do to make this happen? How do we get the rest of the world to move in this direction toward a culture of learning, of improvement? and to reward learning and improvement. Although it's been very cold in this room, there's a very warm feeling among us, and several people have referred to that. We feel a lot of community in this room. Alice Rivlin called us serious, dedicated, evidence-minded progressives. We also believe that we can make society more fair and just. In fact, we heard this morning that the people in this room could change the world. But we also heard that we are in the midst of a venomous high in anti-government sentiment. So how do we end the glorious isolation of those of us in this room? What will it take to make our world view more persuasive? I think we have to be very strategic and very intentional in identifying the levers of change among decision makers in government, philanthropy, and academe, among social reformers, and among the public, among the people we are trying to serve. And I'd like to think that this symposium will indeed be a springboard toward that end, not least because we now have a community of new allies and new friends. And for that, I thank you all very much.